Actis is the leading private equity investor in Africa. They've acquired now the Vlisco Group, which produces a variety of popular West African fashion brands. Vlisco boasts strong retail presence in a number of countries, including the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Ivory Coast, Ghana, Togo and Benin. To talk to us about the acquisition is Ngozi Edozien, who's the head of West Africa at Actis. Thanks so much for coming through, Ngozi. You've paid $151 million for the acquisition of Vlisco. Tell us what inspired this move.
Good morning. I think the first thing to remember is that Actis still remains entirely focused on emerging markets, and part of that emerging market story for us is obviously Africa, and we really believe in the consumer story in Africa. If you look at Vlisco Group, and it's amazing the 4 brands that it has, it is a true consumer story because the brands are targeted at all segments of the population, and they are truly African brands that represent an opportunity to build on the growing consumerism that you have in Africa. And they also are brands that have moved from a very traditional history to one that actually moves with a very modern African consumer. So I think for us, it is on point with what we do. Emerging markets, a brand, a consumer story that has real potential for growth.
Okay, now Vlisco is known as a company that's existed for over 160 years within the retail space and also within the textile manufacturing space. How are you going to advance this business going forward?
Well, I think that, you know, one of the key things that Actis focuses on, as I said earlier, are consumer goods businesses. And I think we've developed a real expertise in this area. One, in helping those businesses really further enhance their sales and marketing capabilities, and in particular, growing the distribution infrastructure to ensure that they can actually reach the full penetration possible in the markets in which they're currently present. The second thing is that we see an opportunity for Vlisco to grow beyond the key countries in which it's present already, and we think that these are brands that have appeal across Africa. Thirdly, if you look at, this is a true manufacturing business, and I think we have real opportunities to work with the management team to enhance the environment, the safety, the production guidelines that have been a hallmark of the company. Lastly, one of the things that we do is we focus on enhancing the governance of the businesses that we invest in. Right. I also think that for the Vlisco Group and their employees, it's going to be really important to have an owner that really believes in the African story, because we have the attention, we've got the time, and we have the expertise. We know these markets, and we think that we have, from the other businesses in which we've invested in, learned how to actually really grow businesses and make them reach their full potential.
Okay, Ngozi, you mentioned retail and the potential in West Africa. Some experts would take a divergent view, saying that compared to other industries, for instance, manufacturing, compared to banking, for instance, retail hasn't performed particularly well in Nigeria. It isn't doing well in other parts of West Africa. And although the company may offer a lot of value, the circumstances in which you'll be operating could count against you. How do you respond to that?
Well, I wouldn't agree, simply because I think first you've got to look at the real sort of the consumer growth story in Africa. Every day we're having many more consumers who are actually entering a middle income or an upper income group. So you've got a growth in consumerism. These consumers are increasingly looking for more sophisticated retail space. They're looking for ways of actually getting immediate access to their products. So I think in our ability to enhance distribution through the traditional channels, because Vlisco today remains a product group that goes through the traditional sort of markets and informal, unstructured retail that we have in Africa. But at the same time, they've also developed a number of retail formats that lend itself to the development of real retail. It lends itself well to the development of the consumer who prefers not to necessarily go buy a fabric and sew, but could potentially also be looking at buying ready to wear. So I think the company is indeed poised for the movement from a less sort of a more traditional retail format to a more formal retail format. And we have within the way the company works a number of ways of attacking distribution and retail. So I think we're very well positioned for any of the circumstances that we find. In terms of manufacturing, I think that the facilities that they have in West Africa have been noted as being some of the best sort of textile manufacturing facilities across the continent. So we hope to continue working on enhancing the manufacturing capacity in Ivory Coast as well as in Ghana.